Hello there, you're listening to Uli Jon Roth on Heady Classic Metal with Jeff Olson. Enjoy. Let me just finish my grapes here. I've got to eat sometime.
I was privileged to talk to Uli Jon Roth in this interview. Here is some questions with Uli, and he just kicks back in his chair eating grapes, and he's having a good time. Your first question is, who are some of your favorite musicians? And we'd like you to go through orchestral. You could, anything you want here. You're free to discuss this. Who are some of your favorite musicians?
Well, there's quite a few. I don't actually listen to music that often because, I guess I've got enough music in my head already. But I've got like an eclectic taste, you know. I mean, I like music from all sorts of genres. Let's say, I really like Keith Jarrett on piano. You know, do you know him?
Oh yeah, jazz, Keith Jarrett.
Yeah, he's phenomenal. Ravi Shankar's guitar. In the classical field, you have people from the past, like Yehudi Menuhin. He was a big influence on me in terms of interpretation. But there's also some new violin people that are great. Classical guitar, you have Julian Bream, Andrei Segovia. Flamenco guitar, you have Paco de Lucia. He's my all-time favorite in that style. Electric guitar, there are many great ones, you know. The obvious ones for me were the ones I grew up with, Jimmy, Eric Clapton. And nowadays, I guess, recently I heard Derek Trucks. I thought he was great, you know. So I don't really listen to bands that much. But, I guess that's pretty much it, you know.
Have you heard of a guy who passed away, composer who passed away, I think a few years ago, George Ligeti?
Ligeti, I have heard of him, but I have to admit that I've never checked into his music, so I cannot say anything about it, you know. I'm more knowledgeable with the classical music from, say, 18th, 19th century and Baroque, you know, but not so much with 20th century, although there were also some great things there.
Sure. That was interesting. That's a great answer for that question. For you in your life, did you have let us hear your story when you were young. In your youth, did you have to move from East Germany to West Germany or anything like that in a time that many of the listeners here would be blown away by your story? Or is there anything like that happened?
Well, no, I was born in West Germany, but of course, I was born like 9 years after the big war, World War II, so Germany was quite affected in some respects by the World War II, and they did build the Berlin Wall, you know, in 1961 when I was very young. So I remember all that, you know, but I grew up in West Germany, which was a very different place from East Germany, you know, which became communist. And we did move several times because my dad was a journalist. And but each move for me was really a good experience because, you know, we're a well-functioning family, you know. I had a great dad and my mom. They were looking after us. I had a younger brother. I still have a younger brother, and who is also in music. Zeno is his name. You may have heard him. And No, I mean, we had a good childhood, and at some point, I then started playing instruments. First one, believe it or not, was the trumpet. I took trumpet lessons from an orchestral trumpet player, and that's how I learned to read music. And yeah, but it wasn't really my favorite instrument, so I then migrated to the bass, electric bass, and after a little while, I discovered the lead guitar, and that was it, and then I started learning guitar, and I learned classical guitar and piano, and later on violin. So yeah, it was a good time, I really enjoyed all this music making.
That is great. You can feel that. You're definitely educated. In that education, were they private lessons, or did you go to any schools studying theory, composition?
I didn't go to schools. I could have, but I didn't want to. And there's anything wrong with schools. I just didn't feel it was for me, because I'm pretty good at teaching myself, and I can say that without any pretense. It's I'm a pretty tough teacher for myself, and not easily satisfied with what I do, particularly when I first started out. So I was largely self-taught on all of these instruments, but I did have a few lessons to get me jump-started. So I took piano lessons, violin lessons, a little bit of conducting. The guitar I did learn by myself, although at some point the only guitar lessons I ever had, I think, was on the classical guitar. I studied half a year with a student of a student of Segovia, I guess, a guy from New York, and yeah, that was really it, But I did study music theory, composition, all these things, counterpoint, but I did it really myself by studying books and listening to the old masters, studying them, looking at how they used the language of music to create their own things, and how they structured their big compositions or their smaller compositions, and learned the tools of the trade that way, and then I ended up writing for orchestras, and I wrote symphonies, and studied orchestration, all these things. I pretty much did what you would do at a conservatoire, but I did it, just because I wanted to do it, and I didn't go to study with somebody else for that.
Let's transition that into your school, the Sky Academy. Can you tell us about that, your philosophy, how that works? I read a lot about it, and I'll add to that alongside of you, but on the show. But let's hear it from you. Tell us about Sky Academy.
Well, Sky Academy is something that's really important for me personally, because first of all, I've always had like a teaching streak in me when I was a kid, and when I played classical guitar. That was before I joined the Scorpions. I already had like 30 pupils, on classical guitar, and then and I enjoyed teaching, and then but come the Scorpions, I stopped all that. There was no more time, and I never did any teaching again. Now with Sky Academy, it's not really a guitar school. We're talking a lot about many other things. The guitar is just a starting point. Sky Academy is really geared for people and musicians who want to find out a bit more about what's inside of the music or behind the music, you know. So it's not so much concerned with practical aspects of playing, although we sometimes do that as well because it goes hand in hand. But it's very much to do with, well, even metaphysical aspects and psychological aspects, emotional aspects, you know, the meaning of the notes, the things that are hidden in music, and I think there are many mysteries in music, and while it may not be necessary or even desirable to try and explain them all, some of that can be extremely helpful, you know, if you look into it, like almost like a behind the scenes kind of thing. I learned an awful lot from it myself by having to kind of explain and teach the things that I knew instinctively, but having to put them into words and putting it across to other people puts a different spin on it. It makes you think a lot harder and more clear-cut. And for me, that was a great process. You know, so we started this off in Los Angeles at the UCLA in 2006. That was the first Sky Academy. It was a 5-day seminar. And for me, that was one of the most important things I ever did, because it really was a new kind of step into a new world. And whatever we did there, it seemed to have had quite an impact on a lot of the students too, because a lot of them kept coming to the following year's seminars, etc., you know. And we're now doing that in many other countries as well. We've been to New Zealand a couple of times, done things in Germany, Italy, France, branching out to even China and possibly India next year.
There's a transition in your life that I just noticed off the cuff. Even my buddy John Smatlack was there during this transition. He's like, "You got to see this guitar." What was the story of the transition from your Fender Strat with your custom tremolo there and to the Sky guitar? What's the story about the Sky guitar and the transition from the Fender Strat into that guitar?
It's quite a long story because it started in the very early 80s. It possibly even started during Scorpion's times in the late 70s. The main thing was that I used to always prefer to write out my guitar leads, basically compose the guitar, the solos in the songs for the albums, rather than just jam them, you know. Not that I don't like improvising, but to get the very best out of a guitar lead in a song, I find it is wise to spend some time with that and not take that too lightly. So very often, even in Scorpion's days, I just felt that the logic of my guitar solos demanded to go a little bit higher in pitch than the Strat actually allowed, you know. So I started pushing strings beyond the limit and broke many in the process. And it became frustrating because there were always like a few notes that were missing, and then it just seemed unnatural and unnecessary. You know, I loved the guitar, I loved the Strat, but something was missing. So that was really the first starting point. So I had a luthier whom I asked to give me 2 extra frets on the Strat, and that was the idea I had, and he did, and they sounded great, and suddenly I was able to, you know, go a little bit higher. And the thing was, as when I saw how well he did it, he said, you know, I can build you any guitar you like. You know, just think about that. And that was really the moment. I suddenly saw things flashing up in my mind, and I started to think in a completely different way, because before I had never really had the idea to create a whole guitar. But suddenly there was like floodgates, you know, opening, and I started really thinking. And then I thought, I do like the Strat a lot. I don't want to lose what the Strat has, but there are certain things that I could see maybe being improved on. So this entire process was in my mind. So one night, I remember it quite clearly, I sat down and I started meditating on it, and this picture emerged in my mind, you know, gradually. It took some time, and I started seeing that sky guitar, you know, with the shape, and that was it. You know, then I started drawing it, and I went to the guitar builder, and we took it from there. And the original drawing already was very close to what it is like now. So then we started extending the fretboard, and I was able to play those high notes. Then I started writing a guitar concerto, and I found, I really need a few more extra bass notes. That I had the idea to create a 7-string electric guitar, so we built a 7-string sky guitar. And then we also needed to develop a new pickup system, because the existing systems didn't really have enough power for me, and to make these high notes really rich and warm and singing. So we worked on a pickup system with a designer in England, John Oram, and we developed the Mega Wing system, which is now on the Sky guitars.
Is that passive or magnetic?
No, it's active, low impedance pickups. And then the story was, this guitar builder built me like 5 prototypes over a period of a few years. And then he stopped building because he had back problems, and the whole project kind of fell asleep because I started writing the symphonies. I went more into the classical, and I kind of lost interest in guitar playing for about 14 years or so. I didn't do any more gigs. I was more interested in composition. And eventually I started touring again because I was asked to take part in a G3 tour in '98. So I started to enjoy touring again. I started doing rock again. And eventually the Sky guitar, someone approached me to put the Sky guitar actually on the market, as a sellable product. And at first I didn't like the idea for several reasons, but then I thought to myself, well, that's a great chance to have new Sky guitars and to actually do a lot more experimentation until we get them absolutely perfect. And that's exactly what happened. So now we have a limited edition of Sky guitars with Dean. They're all hand-built to perfection. They cost an arm and a leg, but they're worth it. They almost cost as much as we're selling them for. But now I have new Sky guitars, and I'm very, very happy with them, and I'm playing them live all the time. And that's that story.
Let's quickly go with current updates. Touring with the Guitar Heroes coming up here. We're looking at October 6th through November 11th I have in front of me.
Yeah, it's going to be a little longer. It's going to go to November 20, actually. They're still booking a few dates on the back end.
And this is all U.S. dates or any other dates?
Well, we're doing one in Mexico, but we're planning a tour of Europe for the spring. Then we're talking about Japan and definitely South America. possibly coming. Yeah. Well, that's basically it. Yeah.
Can you tell us about that tour? Who's all involved? How does the show work? Who are the other guitar players?
Well, this is a project that's been in the making for quite a while. The other guitar players are none other than Michael Schenker and Leslie West. And we are sharing a band, although each of us has also some extra band members. So we're not just playing with one band, but for instance, Michael has his singer, I've got another singer, you know, but we're sharing the drummer, the bass player. So it'll be a very colorful evening, and I'm really looking forward to it. You know, each of us is going to play their own set, and then we will play together. We'll have different pairings, you know, maybe Leslie and Michael and myself, and then all three of us playing some rock classics, you know, some of the stuff that we wrote, but maybe even some other stuff. And yeah, it's a 3-hour show with intermission, so it's almost like a little festival.
Well, let's conclude this way. I always have artists say, what would you like to say to the whole world out there right now at this time from your heart and your mind, your soul? What would you like to say to the internet listeners and radio listeners out there at this time?
That is a great question, and just about the most difficult question you could ask anyone. Kind of like a mean question. Okay, I'll have to give it my best shot, because I'm in two minds about these things, you know. Of course, I'm a little bit of the older generation now, because I'm kind of like one of the first generations of rock music, I guess. So it's easy for me to look back and say, well, everything was, you know, better back then. And so that's too easy an answer. It wasn't. There were a lot of problems in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and they were all different. But nowadays, I think it's fair to say that we're facing problems which are completely overwhelming in more than one way. The times, they are changing with an incredibly fast pace. People find it hard to keep up with technology, with changes, you know, political changes. We have huge economical disasters and problems, huge recessions looming, all this catastrophes, Fukushima, you know. I mean, what more do you want? You know, possible planets coming close to the Earth, you know, conspiracy theories. All this, I think, is probably very valid, and it can be a scary time. Now, the other part of me, which is the artist, and also my spiritual belief, is this: that however bad life gets, I always try to really keep a positive outlook and to have a positive, constructive attitude, because I think that's absolutely crucial. You know, not to get overwhelmed by the negativity, and because you can get sucked in and just focus on these things, and the result is that you end up like a fear-ridden vegetable, and that's not good. You know, I see a lot of people out there who are very confused and have lost the way, or never even found the way, and they're just drifting, you know, through life without much hope, and that is very disheartening, you know. But everybody has their own cross to bear, and we're all in it together. You know, I strongly believe that all people on this planet are connected. spiritually, psychically, the good ones are connected with the bad ones, and the bad ones are connected with the good ones. If there is such a thing as bad and good people, I think there is some good in all of us, and there is also some bad in all of us. You know, we have to make these choices, and we have to also be responsible for the consequences. And I think it's very important that every individual, each person, really contributes something positive. You know, it may sound childish, but, you know, the good deed of the day, just do something that is meaningful and positive, and try to avoid the things that are destructive and negative, because I strongly believe that positive actions bring forth you know, positive structured growth, and that's what we need, because mankind and the earth is a very special place, and mankind and all the animal kingdom and the plant kingdom is a blessing, and there is a certain sacredness about it. And I think we tend to forget these things. We take them for granted. We abuse ourselves. We abuse nature. And, you know, it's sometimes helpful to just sit back and think about it all, and maybe contribute something positive, you know. And you were talking about the spiritual earlier on. For me, it's also very important. I believe in God. I believe there is a creator. And for me, it's very important to have this inner knowledge that things are not all just meaningless and without a purpose. I think there is a purpose out there, although sometimes it's very, very hard to see. I admit that, particularly when you look at all the things that are screwed up, you know. But for most of them, we are to blame, you know, and, you know, mankind has a tendency to be extremely stupid, selfish, and whatever, you know. But it doesn't have to be that way. Okay, that's you know, that's the answer to this very good and very mean question. I could go on for a few days about that. It's one of my pet subjects.